you are all guilty of doing this one pattern or cycle, I should say, which keeps your 3D circumstances the same. And I'm going to break down all of it for you. And if you can apply what's in this video, then you're going to have the exact same successes that all my success stories have that are on my website, and the Wall of Inspiration, I believe it's called. And what they have in common all together is going to be covered in this video. So get your notebooks out and get ready to actually take notes and change your life. Because if you apply everything in this video, like I said, you're going to start seeing movement. You're going to start getting things changing. You're going to start feeling better. Okay, guys? So stick through the whole video. If you want to learn something important, you want to learn a lot of things, then trust me, this is going to be one where you don't want to skip things as well, because like I said, it's stages. We're going to go from beginning to end. And for this, you need to know the full story. So we're going to dive right into it. As you already know, it's Michael from embodiedthestate.com. You already know where to get coaching if you need any. And let's just move on to the topic of the video. So as you already know, there's a cycle, right? There's stages that we all go through. And in this video, we're going to cover 4 stages. And I'm going to be putting on image, which is going to show the cycles and where we're at currently. So I'll be putting that in the post-editing stuff, so don't worry about it. And if for whatever reason it's not showing up on the video, or I just couldn't get it properly or the way I liked it, I'll put a screenshot in the bio down below. So anyways, the stages, right? It's a cycle that we don't realize, right? There's 4 stages in this cycle. And what I'm going to show you is what to do in each step of these stages, right? Because there's always a cycle of, we're in the 3D, we're aware of it, and then we start, recognizing it through our senses, which then we start reacting to things, which then we reflect or manifest more of it. And that's the cycle that really screws up a lot of people. And that's the thing that a lot of us don't realize. We're keeping our focus on things that we don't like, while we're listening to content that's telling us where you place your focus and where your beliefs are aligned, or what going to be your experience are, right? It's going to be what your experiences in the future are going to be, right? And when I say future, I know that, we view things as linear when it's really not and stuff, but just bear with me, okay, guys? So you're going to learn how to break the cycle, and you're going to learn how to apply everything you need, like I mentioned, in each step. But on top of that, the one thing I didn't mention is that you're going to have a sense of confidence. You're going to know what to do, because you're not going to be, in other words, blank-minded when the 3D pops up and hits you. So let's just dive right into this. Okay, so the 3D reality, that is the first stage, right? And you should see it on the screen by now. And that's where we're starting. That's the first stage. We are now aware of our 3D reality, right? That's what happens to all of us when we're manifesting. We become aware of what our 3D is, right? We know what our bank account is, what our love life is, what our health is. We know what we want to have. We know what we don't have currently. These are all things that we're aware of, right? And we often view this as something that's final and something that's, cemented into, permanency, where we can't change it. But we don't realize, we fail to understand that it's literally the past. There's a time delay, right? And I know that there's, different sources out there, because I've been told this by clients that I work with, because they come to me with confusion, right? Because they tell me, oh, but you say that these authors say one thing, but then this person says one thing. And I just tell them, I'm going off what the ancients taught, right? And anyone who studies Seth in the first 2 books, he tells you right then and there's a time delay. It's for a reason. It's the way that the earth is made. It's so you can test yourself. If everything was instant, then you wouldn't really be testing yourself. You wouldn't really be here for the things that you're doing, because we're here to realize that our beliefs are what shape reality, right? It's what shapes our experiences. And on top of that, to have that experience, it requires us to test ourselves. So there is a time delay. And I know this for a fact, because I've experienced it all the time, right? The moment you change your belief, yes, it comes right away, but it doesn't, that's the moment you enter that state, it doesn't manifest instantly. Because if there was 0 time delay, then technically when I embodied the state of the wish fulfilled, I'm literally that person that has it. So if manifestation is instant, then explain to me why everyone that returns to a state doesn't instantly manifest it in that moment that they are that person. Because technically, if there's no delay and you enter the wish fulfilled, what is the wish fulfilled, right? It's when you identify with having something. So you switch your beliefs. And on top of that, the emotions are a byproduct of those new beliefs, which then guarantee and they tell you you're the new person. So that's why I tell you guys, don't worry about what anyone else says. Just understand it's going to take a little bit of time to change your beliefs. But once those beliefs change, boom, the movement starts happening very fast, okay? And regarding the 3D reality as well, we feel like it's happening to us, right? And that's when we begin judging it with our senses, which is coming up, by the way, in one of the future stages, because the senses is something that we need to talk on too, okay? So we know what you guys do regarding the bad, right? We know what everyone does regarding the 3D. They start judging it. They feel bad. You know, they start focusing on the negative. They start focusing on the problems, which guarantees that the problem stays, by the way. That's why Neville teaches people to take the awareness off the problem in order to allow it to wither and die, as he says in his own words. But with that being said, what I want you to know is you need to make sure that you return to remembering what and who you are. Because if you don't do that, then you're really going to be struggling against your 3D reality. So the first thing you do when you recognize you're in a physical reality that you're not that happy with, I want you to really understand that it's about reminding yourself why it's okay to be where you are presently, because you know where you're going to go. And when you realize that, hey, wait a second, I understand that I am literally a walking God in my own personal reality. The Father and I are one, but the Father is greater than I, right? Source is much more greater than any 3D circumstances in front of you. And all those realities that exist that I've talked about in the previous videos, they're there for you to select and to identify with. So if you understand that, wait a minute, I came down here, I chose my vessel, I created my vessel, which was your first manifestation, by the way, your body, and then you entered that body so that you can be human and limited, which is to test yourself, and so you can learn that you're actually God, and you're here in training, right? As Seth says, this is a training ground for gods, it's kindergarten for gods. And that's what it is. So when you realize, wait a second, I came down here, I have the full power, but I have to use my conscious mind to kind of control it. And when you realize these things, and you're able to truly observe the 3D in peace because of this, because you realize, wait a second, if the 3D is the past, it's just a reflection of what I was doing consistently for days and weeks. If I know this, that means logically what I am doing now and tomorrow and after tomorrow is eventually going to catch up and lead me to the new preferred reality. So if you fully decide to trust that, then does it make sense to sit there now and to really be faced with the 3D that you don't like, and then to allow yourself to be infected, to be poisoned by the things that you don't like, when instead you understand what I return to, what feeling I return to, in the sense of knowing, but also you will experience the emotion as a side effect. But what feeling you return to becomes the state that you dwell in naturally, right? Because that's why Neville says feeling is a secret. It's whatever state that you experience again and again that you return to is going to fuse with you and become natural. And when that becomes natural, game over. That's when things start reflecting, right? But when you start looking at things as a human and as someone that things are happening to, much more harder to embody a state. And a lot of you guys come to me and you tell me in the email packages especially, I've been, every time my bad thoughts come, I've just been affirming or doing techniques to embody the state, but it's just so hard and I have trouble doing it. And right then and there, I smile when I see that, not because I'm happy that they're struggling, but because it's such a simple fix that I know they're going to be relieved by the time I give them the information they need, right? So just remember that. And I want you to view life, your 3D, from the perspective as if you trust and you know this. You know that you're the creator. You know that you shape your experience based on changing your belief system. If you know that what you believe, you return to believing time and time again, becomes natural to you, which then reflects from out of you, then shouldn't you be happy and celebrating what you want to have in the future? Because by doing so logically, you then know that's how it comes to you. It reflects from within you. And that's exactly what I want you guys to be doing, right? It's always, you're always moving forward, right? And there's guaranteed change to come if you're consistent in doing this. So that's the first part, okay, guys? That's the part that I want to first introduce you guys to, because so often we find ourselves in our 3D, which is our biggest obstacle. And then we're screwed, right? We don't know what to do. But now you understand a better idea of what to do with your 3D. You remind yourself of who you are. You remind yourself that it's the past. You remind yourself that if you start becoming the new person again, time and time again, then you can understand it's going to reflect. And in the meanwhile, you don't have to be afraid, because you are literally a walking God in your own personal reality. And if you are a walking God in your own personal reality, then what is there to fear? If you know that you can change the experience that you're going to have next week and so on, as long as you're consistent in the new story, then what is there to fear other than our own laziness, our own lack of hunger to actually be disciplined, right? So anyways, that being said, we're all done for that one. And now we're going to move on to the next one. And the next one is going to be 5 senses, right? The 5 senses. And I love the 5 senses because they give us so much pleasure, but they also rob us, right? They're the thief in the night. They rob us of our joy. And what do I mean by this, right? So now we're aware of our 3D. And, of course, the senses are going to start playing the role, right? And the same thing for people that are right now in, let's say, a relationship, right? Let's say if I'm in a relationship, then I know for a fact, right? If I'm going, who knows? Let's say I go to the theater with my person, and I know for a fact that she's going to want to hold hands and cuddle and put her head on my chest and just be all over me for 2 hours, right? Because the person that, like, I don't date people that aren't really, I guess the way to say it is like really in love with me, right? I love when someone shows that they want me around and that they want my either attention or affection or anything, right? So that's the type of people I prefer. And usually it's like really feminine girls that are like that. And so I know, like, I expect this, right? I expect this. And when I experience this, I'm using my senses to experience it. And the senses give me that pleasure of, they trust me, and I'm so happy that I get this person and that we're in love and blah, 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 right? And that's the enjoying, like, that's like joyful part of the senses. But a lot of us also use the senses to rob ourselves. We look at the lack of text message. We look at the lack of movement, the lack of SP stuff, the lack of health, the lack of money. And then we start using the senses to, in other words, snowball ourselves feeling bad. And that's a horrible way to live. We shouldn't be living like that, right? You have to realize that you consent to every negative belief, right? And you consent to beliefs because of these senses. And you have to observe and really realize that what you're seeing is just a reflection of the past. It's a reflection of who you've been in your mental diet, right? Who you've been if you're in your belief system, what you've been doing. So when you realize that, you kind of realize there's nothing to fear. And you realize you can just consent to the opposite. You realize, okay, my senses are showing me things I don't like, but my senses aren't my conscious mind. It doesn't dictate what I accept as a fact, right? They're just here to show me to experience things, right? Good and bad. So instead, when you realize, okay, I'm here to experience things and to just judge the way I want to judge things, right? You're not supposed to judge negatively. You're just supposed to observe. And when you realize that all you have to do is observe, and you realize that it's the senses are there as part of the game, and you look at it through that lens, it's a lot easier for you to kind of see it as a game. You kind of gamify manifesting, and that's kind of what I like doing, right? If you fully trust that your senses are there as part of the challenge, but also to experience good things, then understand that if you're having a hard time because of your senses, then you're losing the game. But then you can realize, if you go to the first step of reminding yourself who you are, as the creator and all that stuff, it's going to make it a lot easier to then identify less through your senses. And that's why Neville says deny your senses, because a lot of times we screw up when we start identifying because of the senses, as opposed to understanding they're just here for us to experience things. And that's all it is, right? And, it's such a scary thing for us because of our senses, what we can see, what we can smell, taste, touch, you name it. And because of that, we allow it to snowball us into our biggest fears, right? But that actually shows us where our beliefs are when that happens. So don't be afraid of being afraid. Allow that to show you where your beliefs are, and then you can change them, right? So that being said, the thing I want to give you guys on this topic as well is more so a clear instruction of what to do, right? So obviously, as I was explaining, you don't let the senses rob you, right? We know this. We don't let the senses rob you, and we play the game the way it's meant to be played. And that means that we do not allow the senses to trick us to imagining the worst and consenting to the worst beliefs available to select from. Because remember, all beliefs are there for us to select from. And you can, like I said in one of my last videos, imagine a room filled with balloons, and they all have strings. And you can just choose each string equals different belief, different balloon. So you can literally choose which ones to let go and which ones to grab. And when you start doing that, then you can start having some fun. Then you start realizing, wait, I can choose to grab onto this belief, but I can also choose to let go of this one and replace it with that one. And that's what you should be doing, right? Realizing you can select. If you're feeling bad, it's because you've selected a belief that allows you to feel bad. And the same thing can be applied to the opposite. Both are equally right in their they're equally, what's the word that I wanted to use? It's like they're equally valuable. Like they're not right or wrong. There's no wrong choice. They're both valid. Sorry, valid is the word I wanted to use. They're both equally valid. So whether you focus on one or the other, that's the one you're going to experience. It's like that tale of two wolves, right? That two wolves live within us, right? The good and the bad one. And whichever one you feed is the one that's going to survive over the other wolf. So which one do you want to survive? It's kind of look at it like that, right? And the last thing I want to touch on this topic is trust and know that you can deny your senses and assign whatever meaning you prefer, and whatever you place your faith, that will be your experience. Just as the quote goes from scripture, according to your faith, so be it unto you. What do you think that means? It's telling you whatever you believe in, wherever you're putting your focus and your awareness and your faith into, right? Whatever you're believing that you can't see, that's going to be your experience. So if you know this, then logically, once again, does it make sense to go back to suffering? And it doesn't, because then you're creating more of it, right? And by the way, guys, if you're enjoying this video and you're getting any value or you're having any aha moments or you get any in the future, by the way, all I ask is just the same way it reached you, if you could hit that like button, so that way it reaches other people. And then that way I know that the way I'm making these videos is actually good for you guys and you guys are enjoying it. But anyways, on to the next part, right? We're going to do, the next stage is reaction, right? The reaction stage. And this is the one that really screws up a lot of people, because we fail to realize our consistent reactions are, believe it or not, a choice, right? And when you realize your reactions are a choice, then you realize you're choosing to constantly react to things, and then that, in other words, reflects them, right? Because I don't want to say create, because we're not creating anything, right? I know a lot of people, say, oh, you guys are all creators and da-da-da. As Neville says, I fully agree with him in the Seed Time and Harvest lecture. It's the one I covered. I have a video on it. Feel free to go look for it in my videos. It's just called Seed Time and Harvest. It's a lecture where Neville literally says that we are not creators, because we're not creating anything since creation is finished. We're simply selectors. We are selectors of realities, of worlds. And when you realize this, you're going to feel more powerful. And by the way, that just reminded me, at the end of this video, at the very end, I'm going to actually share with you a very powerful and inspiring quote that's going to put some things together for you. So I'm going to start doing that at the end of every video now. So even if you guys aren't going to stick around for the full thing, at least go to the end part and look for that quote, because these quotes are going to be things I want you to sit with until I release my next video. But anyway, sorry for getting off track, because it just popped in my head. I wanted to get it out there before I forget. But anyways, it's when you kind of realize that, you're in your 3D circumstances, you normally use the senses against yourself because you're not really identifying with who and what you truly are. And then you reach the stage, the reaction stage of boom, I feel like crap, boom, my heart sunk. And now I'm sitting in this crappy feeling for hours, right? You're literally manifesting, right? And this is the crossroads that I talk about. This is the thing that every success story, when they reach this point in their journey and they consistently make the right choice, it's okay if they make some bad ones here and there, by the way, they don't have to be perfect, but it's when they consistently make the right choice over the bad ones, that's when they start getting their results, right? And I talk about this with everyone that I mentor on our private calls and stuff, right? Because a lot of it is regarding forgiveness, which I'll make a whole video on, on its own, because it's that important. But you got to remember, guys, and I'll tell you the same thing I tell them. It's, you have two choices. You have to live by the law or the Lord, or live a life of suffering and fear. And both require you to believe in something. So once again, according to your faith, so be it unto you. So what are you going to believe in? What are you going to choose to put your faith into? Because whatever choice you make is going to be your experience. So if you know that you're making choices that make you feel like crap, does it not make sense to instead sit there, go back to my last video, the one I released before this one, and apply the 3-prong method that's in that video to then change those beliefs, as opposed to try to fight them or to sit in a crappy mode all day, right? So just remember, guys, we often choose fear instead of faith, and we react by consenting to the fearful beliefs, and that generates the emotion, and that is how we know we are identified with a belief, whether good or bad. An emotion can only be experienced through a belief first, and it's not the other way around. When people realize that them having an emotion is their body's way of saying, you can even look at it like higher self is telling you, okay, we hit the alarm button because this is not what you're supposed to be doing. This is not the direction you want to be in, and this is not what you want. So let this be a little warning, a little, like I used in the example in the last video. It's like having a teacher, a professor stand beside you during an exam and telling you, oh, that answer is wrong. You should change it before you hand it in so you can get a passing grade. That's what those negative feelings are. It's like that little teacher, it's that professor telling you, hey, change the answer, because you don't want that. And when you realize, oh my God, wait, I'm only feeling this way because I already reacted. But that's okay, because now I can see why I reacted. I can go back to step 1, which is to remember who I really am, what I came down here for. God became man so that man could become God. It's so that we can realize who we are, right? And test our powers and test ourselves. Like Neville says, test him and see, right? And that's the thing that I want all you guys to remember all the time. It's just about testing it for yourself. And the more you're consistent with it, the faster you'll get the results and prove it to yourself, okay? So what should you do, right? That's the thing you guys want to know. And to be honest, it's a lot simpler than you think. So now that we're aware of who we are and what we are, right? That we're an eternal entity, an eternal spirit, and that we have inside of us has all the knowledge and power of God, but we can't access it directly. But what we can do is control it through our awareness and higher self. If you want to call it a cheerleader, if it helps you, then you have a cheerleader that has that power, and you communicate with it through what you identify with, through what your beliefs are. So when you realize what the 3D is as well, and how to use our senses and what role they play, right? When you realize your senses are only there to show you what you are, right? And to experience things, we can now decide what road we wish to take at the crossroads. And knowing how the law operates and now being reminded of the things that I just listed, does it make sense at this crossroads to now still choose to believe the things that are fearful, right? Does it still make sense to align with feeling like crap because you're believing in fearful beliefs, right? And the answer is no, right? Instead, what you should be doing is choose how you feel by choosing what beliefs and what reality you're going to believe in, right? To identify with. And that is the secret. That's the key. It's making that choice right there. Can you understand why you're at that crossroads? Can you understand that you're even at the crossroads? Can you understand and remember who you are and why your 3D is the way it is? Because like I mentioned earlier, if we do a recap, it's your 3D is just the past. It's showing you who you've been. So if you know that who you've been has been not good and your mental diet has been lazy, then you understand, hey, wait a minute, starting today, I was doing really damn good. And tomorrow I'm going to do amazing. And then tomorrow comes and you're doing great. So now you're 2 days in a row doing great. Now you understand, wait a minute, I'm on day 2 now. So just like the bad came, the good inevitably has to catch up as well. And that's exactly what Seth talks about too. So just remember that, guys, okay? It's just about being gentle and playful with yourself, right? Have fun with this journey. And don't let it scare you so much. It's just understanding what we're supposed to be doing at what times and why. When you understand why things are the way they are and how the law operates and the world operates, the universe operates, it's a lot easier to walk through the 3D understanding that you don't have to react to it necessarily all the time. You can accept it for what it is, understanding that it's going to change. Okay, guys? So on to this part. And this is the reflection part. And as we already know, the reflection is the manifestation. It's the success story, whether good or bad, right? And you know, this is the part that we're all the cause. We are the cause, but none of us will take credit unless it's good, right? Especially a lot of people coming to me, right? We spend so much time returning to the bad beliefs, and we continue to perfectly manifest days with no progress, and we once again mistake another week as the same reality. And we think that things aren't working because of this. But in reality, you know, you're just manifesting an entire new outcome, and you're extending that outcome by refusing to die to the old story, right? At least long enough. You're refusing to die to the old story long enough to let the 3D catch up, right? Because some of you do die to it for a couple days, but then day 3 comes and you see no results, and then you're back to complaining, right? Don't do that, guys. Let it catch up and just trust. If you're not willing to go 30 days, trusting that somewhere, even if it's day 30, something's going to happen, then you're going to have a hard time even making it through the first week. Just trust that something will happen if you're consistent. But if you're not even consistent for a week, then how can you even complain and be upset, right? Because you haven't given the 3D enough time to catch up, because you haven't shown that you've changed, right? So just remember that, right? And when you refuse to die to the old story and you refuse to let it, you know, the new story catch up, you're dooming yourself. You're reflecting more of the lack that you created a week ago, but you're viewing it as, oh, what I'm doing isn't working. And then you seek other techniques, and then you waste your own time, and there's just a cycle, right? When you can stare at your reflection and you understand and you just exist within it through the awareness of God, of what you are, and knowing that it's literally your creation, right? Knowing that you're literally in a waking dream. You're in the God of Garden. You control everything. It's just up to you to be consistent. And are you hungry enough to be consistent? But anyways, when you know that you're there and you have this understanding, right? And that it's all your creation and you're seeing the power in the negative, you use that and you can harness it to remind you of your power in your personal reality. Because guess what? That negative that you're reacting to, that you've reflected, it was your creation. It was your own manifestation, right? The only difference was we're not taking credit for it because we don't want it. But guess what? You ordered it. You just forgot you ordered it. And that's what you got to remember, guys, okay? You know, your personal reality, you know, it's yours to reflect the way that you want, but it's up to you to decide what beliefs you're going to align with to allow the experience to unfold and to come through you, right? And you can equally reflect the good, the opposite good that you want, with the moment you become aware of the opposite reflection in front of you, which is your 3D, right? So when you start getting that, you know, the results and the results aren't what you want, and let's say it's been only 3-4 days of your consistent mental diet, that's okay. If it's not coming that day, understand. It just means you haven't changed your belief yet. You're probably getting close, right? Especially if it's being more natural. That's great. It's only a matter of time then. And all you got to do is be consistent. And the less you identify with the bad and the more you identify with the good, with the reality you prefer, with the beliefs that are in alignment with that reality that you want to experience, the faster you change, which then the faster your reality changes, right? So I want you to, in other words, when you're faced with the reflection, right? Let's say something pops up and you just began doing mental diet after this video, right? And let's say you got blocked or a bill popped up and now you're not going to have money like you thought you would because you're manifesting money, right? And whatever it is that's bothering you, because the new reflection pops up, right? It hits you, boom, reflected. I want you to observe it through the eyes of God, right? I want you to observe it through the eyes of God or the law, whatever you want to call it or look at it as, and accept that you are the cause. And do not blame yourself, right? Accept the same way that you created the experience and you are experiencing it, that you can experience the opposite if you prefer it, right? And remind yourself, you know, of the previous steps that are in this, the stages, right? Remind yourself of them, of what the 3D is, what the senses are, and the pitfalls we fall into due to them, right? And remember that there's two paths that you can take. You can take one path that's to the right or the left, and each one has a different outcome, right? One is faith and one is fear. And if you don't want fearful experiences, then stop returning to fearful beliefs. And if you want loving experiences, then start returning to loving beliefs. And if you want, you know, abundant experiences regarding wealth or whatever it is, then start feeling abundant. Same thing with health, right? That's all. It's whatever you put your focus on. And that's what I want you guys to do, okay, guys? Just remember, the bad that's in front of you is equally as valid as the good. And same thing, the good is equally as valid as the bad. That means all can be experienced, but you just happen to be aligned more with the bad, and that's okay, because now you're starting to align with the good. And when you realize that you're aligning with the good, you can now be at peace because you know it's going to catch up, guys, okay? So I'm going to give you guys a little quote that I want to share with you guys. And before I do that, all I ask of you guys is I want you to also comment down below, you know, if this video was helpful, right? And the reason I asked you guys to do that is so I know, right? If it's helpful to you, I'm going to keep making them like this, where I break things down, I kind of structure them a bit more. And hit that like button as well, so then I know that, you know, you guys are receiving it well, and then I also know it's going to help other people. So I'll use those as the indicators to know if you want me to keep making these type of videos, and if not, I'll kind of go back to my older ones or just different styles as well, right? Because there's so many ways I want to teach you guys, but I'm trying to get more info, more structured in the same time frame. So if you guys are liking these videos, all I ask is just let me know down below, and feel free to leave even a question, a manifestation-related question, because I'm going to be doing a Q&A video very soon. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask them, right? You can leave 1, 2, it doesn't matter. Just don't leave like 100, but I'm going to pick probably one. And if it's 2 short ones, I'll probably do those as well. So yeah, get that done and I'll check them out. I'll read every single one. So, you know, for this video, before I give you guys a little quote, I just want to summarize, you know, some key points for you so that we know what we're walking away with before I give you this inspirational quote. So we know what the cycle is, right? We know that each stage of it is and what to do moving forward, right? We know what to do when the 3D hits us. We know what to do when our senses are bothering us and when we're aware of things through our senses. We know what to do when, you know, in other words, we're faced with things that kind of bother us, right? Because then we have the reflection and then we have the mirror. We have all these different things that we got to work with, right? And the thing about all these different stages, and to be honest, it's like the senses is one of the most important ones, because right then and there, like, that's your moment. That's your moment that you can literally decide what your senses mean to you, because we often fail to remember that we can give meaning to anything, right? The thing about senses is, like I said, they're there to experience things, but who's the one that gives it meaning? Is it your senses or is it you? The answer is you, right? It's consciously, it's you. So if you know that it's you giving meaning and you understand that everything is meaningless until you give it something, then why not give yourself, just test it. What do you have to lose for just 30 days? Just be willing to test it. The worst thing that can happen is nothing happens, right? The best thing that can happen is you just prove to yourself you're in full control. Now, guess what? Life becomes exciting. So just remember that, guys. And remember, anything I can do, you can do. And anything you see anyone else doing, you can do. Why? Because we all come from the same source, which means we all have the same capabilities. So without further ado, here is the lovely quote that I want to share with you. And this quote, I want you to truly take it in, write it down if you need to. And I want you to really look at the message that's being taught. And this quote comes from Seth directly through Jane Roberts. And this is from the second book, The Nature of Personal Reality. So the quote goes, "The living picture of the world grows within the mind. The world as it appears to you is like a three-dimensional painting in which each individual takes a hand. Each color, each line that appears within it has first been painted within a mind. And only then does it materialize without. In this case, however, the artists themselves are portions of the painting and appear within it. There is no effect in the exterior world that does not spring from the inner source. There is no motion that does not first occur within the mind. That is from Seth, from The Nature of Personal Reality, specifically on page 29, if you guys care. And think about it. He's telling you, you guys are artists, right? And even in that book, in the earlier chapters, he kind of explains certain things too, of how, you know, the artist, when they get their hands covered in paint, they don't then identify with that paint and say, oh no, I'm red. I'm forever red. But you guys are doing the same thing, right? And Seth, that's the thing I love about Seth, is like he's telling you, you guys are the painters, but the only difference is you're in your own painting. And you guys are creating your own painting, and then you're identifying with your own paint. You're identifying with the colors instead of realizing you're the painter. So guys, with that being said, and with that quote in your mind, I want you to all go paint the best life for yourselves. I want you to go realize that you're painters. And remember, until my next video, you are all painters, and you're selecting the worlds that you want. So go paint the most beautiful picture you can think of and identify with it. Again and again and again, be relentless in your pursuit of happiness. Don't let anyone tell you anything that is going to limit you, because I want you to understand the only limits you have are the ones you place in yourself. So without further ado, I'm going to let you guys go, and I love you all very much. Thank you for all the likes and subscribing, and I will see you guys very, very soon. Thank you. Take care.